Less than a week ago, we thought we had just watched the Kraken play what we certainly hoped was going to be the worst game of the season as they lost 6-1 at home to the San Jose Sharks. It makes it worse that it was at home, for sure, and it certainly doesn't help that the very next game that they play at home is this one. Probably, and I'm going to say certainly their worst game yet. Sure, yeah, they got a point in the standings. They lose 2-1 in the shootout. They have no excuse whatsoever, at least with the San Jose game. You can look back and say, oh, well, the Sharks were playing pretty well. They were coming into that game playing pretty well, and they went on to beat some much better teams than the Kraken. And I don't think, sure, the Kraken are sitting third in the division right now. They could have been second if they had won this game, but they are not going to be there for very long. Not playing the way that they're playing right now. And especially not playing the gutless hockey that they played in this game. And I'm not expecting this team to be a world beater. I'm not really still even expecting them to make the playoffs. But the fact that they're somehow managing to scrape together some points at least gives the outside chance that maybe it could happen. But there's absolutely zero chance, that it happens playing like that. This is a Columbus Blue Jackets team that, look, maybe if you took this game into a vacuum and said, yeah, look, Columbus is playing decently this season. This is not a Columbus team that's a total pushover. They came into this game at NHL 500, 7-7-1 after having just lost in overtime the night prior, which is going to play into that a little bit. But they are not the pushover Columbus Blue Jackets of years past, a team that has been right around the bottom of the standings with the Kraken a couple of years, but been around the bottom of the standings for the last few seasons, at least to start the season. They're not that team. They're not a pushover. So, yeah, maybe getting 1 point in it, you'd still be a little bit disappointed. But in a vacuum, maybe that's not the worst thing in the world. But this game was not played in a vacuum. The Columbus Blue Jackets were coming in on the second half of a back-to-back after having just played the previous night in Edmonton, one of the farthest travels I would have to imagine. I'm not going to look at every back-to-back every team has over the entire season and see what the longest travel distance is a team has to play. But I'd have to imagine Edmonton to Seattle is about as far as the NHL is going to make a team travel from one night to the next. And then you put on top of it that they played overtime the night before. And then, it keeps getting worse. Believe me, not only had they played the night before, gone to overtime in that game after blowing a late lead, but they also had all that travel while almost the entire team is sick enough that they, according to their coach, basically sent everybody out on the ice for morning skate and just decided they'd play whatever 19 guys felt like they could stand with 2 feet on the ice for at least 10-15 minutes in the game and not fall over from whatever illness is going through the room. And you know it has to be a pretty bad one because they end up starting the same goaltender, their backup goaltender, for the second night in a row in this game because their starter, who didn't play the previous night because of illness, was still too sick to play in this game. So the Kraken are playing against a team that's tired, has traveled a bunch, and they're all probably throwing up into the trash can every time they leave the ice for intermission. Not on the bench. Maybe one or two of them did hide it, but I'm sure that locker room was still not a hooping and hollering good time after this game because they're all probably just feeling relieved that they don't have to be skating anymore. And yet the Kraken still went in and got outshot by 11 against this team. Defense first system, So again, while there might be an excuse for the San Jose game because they were playing well, it's a young, fast team. They're going to take advantage of. We talked about all this stuff. You can at least have some excuse. 6-1. I don't think there's much excuse for losing 6-1 to that San Jose team, even if they're playing well. But at least there's some reason you can point to with this game. There is no excuse. There is no reason for the Kraken playing the way that they did in this game. They're rested. Sure, they're not the most healthy. They don't have Decor. They don't have McCann. But they at least aren't throwing up in the locker room. They at least are coming in with a day's rest. And at very least, they aren't playing their backup goaltender for the second straight night. Sure, they are playing still one of their two backups because Decord is out, but Murray was once again fantastic in net. There's probably only two reasons you're watching this video, and the first reason you're probably still not watching it at this point, but that would be that this game sucked and you wanted to have some sort of sense of relief. You wanted the silver linings. You wanted to feel like there was some upside to this game. And if there is any upside, which Whoa, I don't know that there is, but if there is any upside, it's that Matt Murray played a fantastic second start in a row with a day's rest. Yeah, sure, some travel coming off the road trip, but the Kraken had a day's rest, and they don't have the Black Plague or whatever Columbus is dealing with going through the locker room, so still pretty much no excuse. Murray was still good in net. He gave you more than enough chance to win, and I think just about as much chance to win as Decord would have. The only goal that he doesn't stop is on a 5-on-3, and even that one, he makes a miraculous near save, gets just about all of it, getting the palm of his hand on it, stretching out with the blocker. I'm pretty sure it was the blocker, but he gets the vast majority of that puck, just not quite enough as it bounces off of his hand and just trickles into the goal through the corner of the net across the goal line. And if he had gotten any more of it, it probably would have stayed out, or it certainly would have been enough that Alexiak could have reached his stick to it and gotten to it before it got across the goal line. So he did just about everything possible you could expect from a goaltender in this game, and they still couldn't generate enough offense back the other way to make up for the one goal that he allows, which you already put him in that bad spot by having back-to-back penalties, and you can complain about maybe the Tolvanen one. It's 200 feet away from the net. It's literally against the boards, as far away from the Kraken end of the ice as it could possibly be. And Tolvanen gets called for a trip. Was it a trip? I think you could make an argument one way or the other. Either way, certainly when you're on the penalty kill, you can't afford to have Lindgren throwing Fantilli to the ice and against the post. And I think they end up calling it for a cross check. They could have called it for a hold. They could have called it for interference. I feel like there's 3 or 4 different things that they could have called Lindgren for there. You absolutely cannot do that. You shouldn't be letting Fantilli just pass you for free anyway, but I guess as soon as that was done, he figured why not throw him into the post and just hope the officials aren't looking, but instead he decides to do that. You go to the 5-on-3, and then Murray does just about everything in his power to keep it out, but isn't quite able to. You can't blame him there. And beyond that, yeah, again, like Decord probably lets in one there anyway. It's not anything against Decord. This was fantastic goaltending. That cannot be an excuse. And as far as offense back the other way, well, yeah, that is certainly a massive problem. Again, the Kraken get outshot by 11 shots. 34 shots that they allow defense for a system, and they allow 34 shots on goal, and some of those were pretty dangerous ones. Murray was tested in this game. Meanwhile, they get 23 back the other way, and while expected goals metrics will tell you that the Kraken apparently got some pretty dangerous looks in there, aside from the one that they score on, which is a Ryan Winterton goal beautifully set up by Ben Myers. So I suppose the other bright spot in this game, the other silver lining out of it, is that your fourth line once again looks like your best line, which I don't know if that's a good thing or not, that your fourth line once again looks like your best line. It's been too many times this season where the fourth line looks like the best line, and it's not a stretch at all to say that they did. In fact, even this time, the advanced metrics point to the fourth line being the best line. Ben Myers was fantastic in this game. Ryan Winterton gets a goal, and at this point, you have to wonder if you should start hoping that Ryan Winterton never scores again, because apparently the only times that Winterton scores, the rest of the team just decides to sit on their hands and not play the rest of the game, which might be in a bit of an exaggeration. The Kraken did play the rest of the game. I think Matty Beniers gets the short end with the advanced metrics. He's out there doing everything he can to be a one-man show, and even Schwartz had some good moments here and there, but it just feels like Beniers has no help on that line, no one that can keep up with him, and maybe if they try enough games of it, that chemistry with Capo Caco will come back, but at least right now, it's not there. It feels like Beniers is trying to do everything himself, play good in the defensive end, and then one-man transition the puck into the other end, and then he's just so far unable to finish doing the full, all of it by himself. So I don't know where you're trying to generate offense from, but apparently right now, the only place the Kraken can generate offense from is that fourth line. And it's hardly even an exaggeration at this point. The Kraken in their last 2 home games have 2 goals. They're both coming from the fourth line. They're both coming from Ryan Winterton. And meanwhile, on the season as a whole, this team has only scored 4 goals in a game once, at least in regulation anyway. They've scored 4 2 other times, but both of those were overtime wins. The other one, they scored 4 games in an overtime loss to the Montreal Canadiens. Aside from that, it's been 3 or fewer goals in every game in regulation. So they're certainly not scoring. And as far as allowing goals back the other way, well, their defense first just led a team who's basically coasting around the ice, skating with cinder blocks tied to their legs for how tired they looked. And they looked every bit a team that was dealing with the flu and just did a bunch of traveling on the second half of back-to-back. This is not a Columbus Blue Jackets team that was flying around the ice, inexplicably just running off adrenaline. No, they looked every bit as tired as they should, and the Kraken still let them get 34 shots on net and a few pretty dangerous ones that Murray had to make good saves on. Meanwhile, back the other way, you're still 23 shots on goal, even with all the offensive zone time, all the puck possession the Kraken had, and through the second and third period, the Kraken did have a lot of puck possession, offensive zone time. They just are not finding ways to get to the net or get shots on the net, which, as far as the getting to the net part, that comes back to what Lane Lambert said he wanted this team to be from the beginning of the season. He said he wanted this team to be tough to play against. And so far, it seems like the hard work that they did in the preseason and that toughness that they wanted to be one of the more, look, if you're going to win, maybe you come in and win, but you're going to pay for it. You're going to have to earn it. We're going to play solid defense. We're going to hit you hard, and we're going to make you earn every last thing you get against this team. And in this game, they didn't make Columbus earn almost anything. Columbus is still getting, I've said it, because it's hard to believe that they got 34 shots on a team that prides themselves on being defense first. But then back the other way, tough to play against. They couldn't get to the net, and they had 9 hits. 9 hits against a team that just played the second half of is playing in the second half of a back-to-back with their backup goaltender starting the second night in a row, and they are all trying not to throw up on the ice at any given second. I don't know if there's a penalty for that or what. They probably have to blow the play dead or something to go clean it up, but that is aside from the point because the Kraken aren't making them work hard. 9 hits, that is not hard to play against. That is soft. Or look, I don't necessarily want to pick out one player specifically from this game because I think there are more than enough players that are to blame for what we just saw in that 60-minute something that they just somehow managed to get a point out of. They do not deserve this point. They should just give that point, go to Bettman and say, sir, we do not deserve this. Please take it. This is a loser point that we are definitely not worthy of. So I really don't necessarily want to pick out one player, and I don't even necessarily think that this guy played the worst game, but I am starting to get real sick and tired of Mason Marchment putting in almost no effort at any given time in a game. We talk about the toughness, and this is how we're getting here, is we talked about this team being tough to play against, and Marchment it feels like almost the face of it. He's the guy that you brought in, certainly of the people you brought in the offseason, which is not a very long list, granted, but he is definitely the one among them that leans most into that tough, hard-hitting, hard to play against personality, whatever that you wanted this team to be. And so far this season, I don't know what his hit total is. Maybe I can put it up on the screen here through editing, but I can tell you that he has not laid a bunch of hits, at least not over the last few games. At the start of the season, we got to see some of that sandpaper from him, and he'd had a couple of moments that has earned him some goodwill from at least a good chunk of the fan base. So I'm sure that this is, for some people, not going to come over especially well, and the offense hasn't been there. But at this point, I hardly even care that the offense hasn't been there for Marchment. I hardly even care that he isn't scoring goals. I think he still has just 1 on the season, which is definitely not good from a guy that came off last couple seasons with 20 plus in Dallas, and I was never expecting 20 plus from Marchment this season. We knew this team wasn't going to score a ton of goals, probably a little bit more than 4 goals max, and that's just in 1 game in regulation, 3 games total with a couple of overtime goals. We knew that he probably wasn't going to score 20 here in Seattle, but he's not even hardly trying, it seems like. I don't know how many times I have seen him get out-hustled to a puck when he's the one closer to it, an open puck in the middle of the ice, and he's just casually like, yeah, I'll probably get to that first, and someone just comes out of nowhere at least 50% farther away than or twice as far even as he is from the puck when it gets loose and he gets outskated to it. He got beat out for an icing in this game as he's just kind of casually back-checking. I don't even care that if maybe he was on the end of a long shift. I don't remember at that specific time whether or not he had been out on the ice for 30, 45 seconds, maybe even been out there for a minute. I do not care. There's no excuse against this Columbus team, specifically in this game, what they are coming in dealing with. There's no excuse to be getting beat out for an icing. None whatsoever. I don't care short of having the blade missing from your skate or having just taken a shot off your ankle, there is no excuse to be getting beat out for an icing. So what's the answer then? I don't know. As far as the offense is concerned, I really don't know. And as far as the other side of the ice is concerned, the Kraken are lucky to have points in some of these last couple of games. They got 2 points on the road trip, barely, because they, in the final seconds, got a miraculous goal to send the Blues, one of the worst start to the season teams in the NHL this year. They had a miracle happen to get them to overtime to even have a chance to get 2 points. They do somehow get 2 points in that game, but they could have easily come away from that game with 0 points, coming off of whatever that abomination, that horribly embarrassing game against the Sharks was. You go in and nearly lose in regulation to one of the worst performing teams to start the season in the Blues. Then you go to Dallas, where, at least with that loss, you did lose, again, a 2-1 game. So I guess we're back-to-back games with the Kraken losing 2-1. At least this one, they get 1 point. But with the last game, there's at least reasons to feel good coming out of that game. And we talked about him in the game. We talked about how Matt Murray looked good, and we felt good about that. I guess that's still true coming out of this game. We talked about how the Stars are at least a good team. And yeah, they were on the second half of a back-to-back too, but the Kraken were on the second half of a back-to-back. So that evens out. Yeah, you're playing against a backup goaltender there, but DeSmith stood on his head and stole that game from you. I mean, honestly, I think the Kraken outplayed the Stars for decent chunks of the game. And sure, the Kraken might have outplayed the Blue Jackets for chunks of this game, but far from enough of it. And they took far from enough advantage of those chances that they had. And in this game, I mean, look, you gotta say, for a second night in a row in goal, hats off to, I'll look it up later. I can't even remember what his name is, the goaltender for the Blue Jackets in this game, but he did not have to work half as hard. He didn't have to work a third as hard as DeSmith did to keep the Kraken to just 1 goal in the previous game. They just did it to themselves. Now you're at a point where it seems like most of your offense, or certainly a well outsized portion of your offense, is being generated by your fourth line. As far as being a defense first team, you're not stopping dangerous chances. You're just kind of hoping that you're going to get good goaltending to great goaltending performances every night to keep you in games. And that's certainly what the Kraken got in this game. And I'd even go so far as to say that's what they got in Dallas as well. I'd still say Grubauer had a pretty good game in St. Louis, and well, you got a not so great game from Decord against San Jose, and we saw how that went. It was still probably the worst defensive effort. So I suppose, at least as far as defensive efforts are concerned, it's gotten better since what is hopefully going to still be the worst defensive effort of the season against the Sharks. This one is pretty bad considering the circumstance, but you at least managed to prevent 6 goals. You still only let in 1, technically, 2 with the shootout, but you're the Kraken going to a shootout, and you don't have Freddie Gaudreau, who for whatever reason is good at the shootout, and you lost him right before, I mean, within minutes before you went to your first shootout back in Ottawa, and now he's obviously still not around. Sounds like he's just about to come back, but it wouldn't be surprising to me if the Kraken only play these 2 shootouts all season. Actually, that would be kind of surprising with how many times they're going to go to overtime, but the point is, Gaudreau is good in the shootout. You don't have him. It seemed inevitable you were going to lose. I will say, though, one bone I want to pick with the shootout, and at that point, it's a 50-50. That's, as soon as you get to the shootout, that's the dream situation for the Blue Jackets. It might as well be a 50-50, and the fact that you even got a point out of this game, they're going to look back at this. If they had lost in overtime, they're still going to look back at this point and say that this is the hardest working point that they've had all season. The point that, by all means, they should never have had, but now they end up with 2 points out of it. So yeah, dream situation. They even get to the shootout in the first place. The bone I want to pick, though, with the Kraken is, how do you not send Matty Beniers out for the shootout? Like, I get that he's not a goal scorer necessarily, but we've seen him put on some pretty nice moves in the shootout, and it seems like his issue is much more just getting into those tight areas around the net, and less so the shot quality or his ability to handle the puck in a way to beat a goaltender and deke them out. We've seen him make some pretty nice moves in his shootout or on breakaways. He can definitely do it. I don't really know why you're sending, I guess Tolvanen scored, but I don't know why you've got Eberle. Eberle makes some sense, but you started out with Mason Marchment. What are we doing here? Like, what have you seen from Mason Marchment that I'm sure they've seen something in practice, but I don't know. I don't know why we're nitpicking the shootout. It just feels like Beniers should have had one of those chances, especially when you go to 5 chances in the shootout and Beniers doesn't get one of them. He doesn't get one of your first 5 chances in the shootout. Really? I don't know. It's a small thing. At that point, it feels like, I mean, honestly, at the point that it made it to overtime, it already feels like a moral loss, even if the Kraken win it in overtime. And yeah, the fans would have gone crazy. It would have been a lot of fun. Overtime wins are always fun. But in a game that you should have been, if there was ever a game that the Kraken should have rung up 8 or 9 goals, this was definitely that game. And they scored one goal against a team that was starting their backup goaltender for the second straight night, dealing with some kind of illness that is bad enough that it's newsworthy, which in hockey, if it's a bad enough illness to be newsworthy for the team, it's pretty bad. They look every bit as tired and sick as they say they are, and you still get outshot by 11, out hit by 6, only with 9 hits, and maybe you get, as far as expected goals, you get out expected goals by nearly 1.7 to 1 expected goals given up more to the opponent. The fact that this got to overtime, honestly, the Kraken might even have been lucky that it got to overtime. The goal that they scored, the Ryan Winterton goal, came immediately after they got the luckiest break of the game, is a puck that, I mean, it's in the net 90% of the time. It's a rebound out to the far side where the only person there is a Blue Jackets player, and it just takes a weird little hop over the blade of his stick as he goes to shove it into the net. He's not even trying to get a quick shot off, and it just happens. It takes a pretty big bounce. He has a second to try and collect the puck and get the shot off, and even then it just bounced too much for him. So they got about as lucky as they could have to not get scored on first. Then they come back the other way and score that goal, and then nothing the rest of the game. Not a thing. They give the Blue Jackets a minute of 5-on-3, and then just, don't score to try to win this one in regulation. Go to overtime. Somehow, against a tired team, don't even score in overtime. Hardly even get a good look in overtime. I think they got 1 shot on goal in overtime. I'm pretty sure that we went into overtime 33-22. So I think both teams had 1 shot on goal in overtime. The Kraken, it wasn't a dangerous one. They really don't even create a dangerous look. So I don't know what they felt like that was still in the legs of the Columbus players that they couldn't press that advantage a little bit more. But just about every player that wasn't Mason Marchment was winning races to the puck, and they still just were playing against the Blue Jackets like they were fresh off a 3-day break Edmonton Oilers or something, or Colorado Avalanche. I don't know. Whoever you want to... Edmonton Oilers are not playing especially well right now, so we'll say the Avalanche. They're playing this team like they were a dangerous threat, and they just shouldn't have been. They really shouldn't have been, and for any Blue Jackets fans watching this, all credit to the Blue Jackets. That is one of the gutsiest wins, one of the gutsiest wins you're ever going to see from a team. And from a Blue Jackets team that has not had a fan base that has not had a lot to cheer about since that against all odds sweep of the Lightning a few years ago before they won their back-to-back cups. I mean, there's not been a lot to cheer about for Blue Jackets fans. Last year has to be one of the toughest years that a fan base has ever had to deal with as far as Blue Jackets. So, I mean, I think you'd have to enjoy this. You'd have to be over the moon with this win from a Blue Jackets perspective. They've gotten off to a pretty decent start to the season, and then to come in and win this game that you have no business being. I don't think there is a single person in that locker room that realistically thought to themselves, yeah, we got a good chance at winning this one, when they went out to take that warm-up skate. And here you go. 2 points in the standings handed to you by a team that just could not have been any easier to play against. So I suppose at the very least, you got to feel lucky that you're in the spot you're in right now, still over NHL 500, 7-4-5. You still got points in 12 of your first 16 games. You're still third in the division. So you're somehow, some way, against all odds, it feels like, as far as how the team's been playing on the contrary to how the team has been playing, certainly lately anyway. Again, they got off to a good start to the season. And as far as the soft plays, certainly in this game, I don't want to, like, I don't blame Lane Lambert for this at all. I think this is just down to the players not showing up to play. Just maybe they had heard everything that Columbus was dealing with. They certainly probably saw that it was the same goaltender 2 nights in a row. I mean, they would have seen the scouting report. I'd have to imagine whatever limited amount of it is. They had to know that they had the advantage coming into this game, and they certainly played like they knew they had the advantage. Actually, no, they didn't really, did they? No, they played like they played like they were the team coming off of the second half of a back-to-back. They really didn't play like they thought they had any kind of advantage. So maybe they thought Columbus was not dealing with anything. I don't know. The point is, it seems like the message of being hard to play against from Lambert was instilled at the start of the season, but just didn't sink in far enough. It lasted all of 3 weeks to the start of the season, through the first couple games at home and most of that road trip, maybe even into the first game in the next homestand. But it certainly has not been there for the last few games, at the very least. Maybe the Dallas game. You know what? I'll give them the Dallas game. They were hard to play against in the Dallas game. But aside from that, woof. It has been... Yeah, I think contrary to how the team has been playing, they have to be feeling pretty good about the fact that they somehow are still sitting third in the division and have an opportunity that, if they can get back to how they played at the start of the season, if they can get back to being the hard to play against team that they want, not letting teams into the middle of their defensive end, not letting teams rack up 30 plus shots on goal in the second half of a back-to-back with travel when you have the flu and your backup goaltender in for the second night in a row, not letting teams just walk all over you. In that way, not giving teams 5-on-3 opportunities for a minute, and then can actually take advantage of some opportunities the other way, actually get some shots on goal, actually score some goals here and there. Yeah, maybe you can still find yourselves in a playoff spot at the end of the season. The chance is still there. Somehow the chance is still there. But if they keep playing the way that they did in this game, I remember, I'm just now remembering that we ended the last video against the Stars saying that if they play the way they did in that game against the Stars, they'll have no problem staying in this playoff spot and winning enough games to make the playoffs. If they play the way that they did in this game, they will have no problem finishing the season with one of the best odds to land the first overall pick, which, considering how the offense is going right now, they could probably use Gavin McKenna. With that, though, there are no stars in this game, as we're going to close things out here. Yeah, Murray is probably worthy of a star. He played more than well enough to get one. Honestly, the fourth line I could give, I feel like, all three of them stars. Myers he had a great pass to set up the one goal. Winterton had the one goal. Cartier played well again. Myers did have an ill-timed penalty in the third period, but that Kraken at least killed that one off. So Beniers, again, I feel like played well. So there's a couple of guys here and there that, if you really wanted to just end on a bit of a high note, you could talk yourself into 3 stars probably. But after a game like this, no. It's just no. We have to hope for something better. They'll get a very good Winnipeg Jets team who is coming in not playing very well. And we talked about how the Kraken, if you really want to give them excuses, maybe have the excuse of losing that game to the Sharks because they were a bad team coming in playing like a good team. Now you've got a good team in the Jets coming in playing like a bad team. So we'll see. If you don't win that one, then you've got redemption chance on Saturday against the Sharks, and you absolutely need to win that one. I already mentioned coming into this, it felt like the Kraken kind of needed 4 points out of the 3 games here at home. They found a way to cough up or throw away 1 point in this game, so they only get the 1. You need at least 3, I think, still out of these next 2 games. And that means that an overtime loss maybe to the Jets and then redemption against the Sharks. We'll see what happens. But the Sharks are still playing well. The Jets aren't, but they're a good team. The Kraken need to turn things around, and they need to do it now. Until next time, though, stay safe out there. Be good to each other. God bless, and go Kraken. And thank goodness for the Seahawks right now.